So, um, one of the things that are cool about Stakehouse is how it's public infrastructure, how anybody can go and use it to set up their validators and create derivative ETH. They have an amazing model that's been tested a lot, and it deals with all the infrastructure part, all the software infrastructure part on how to create this derivative ETH. I'm not going to talk about it because you guys have been hearing about it the whole day. There's another part of this, which is where do you run these validators? These validators need to be run by somebody. There needs to be a physical machine running these validators. So that's a little bit what we're going to do, we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to talk about DAppNode. Maybe I should introduce myself. My name is Pol Lanski, and I'm from the DAppNode team. So is Edu over there. And yeah, so what we do, we'll see about that later. And how do we make, we're going to talk about DAppNode and how do we make networks more resilient through the centralized hardware infrastructure. And the second part of it will be a quick workshop on how to set up your staking business in about 30 minutes. You might need a bit of a team. You might need some, you might need to know how to fork a repository. But if you know that, you can pretty much set up a staking business. So let's start with DAppNode and why we're here. Well, our mission is to create a human-centric, decentralized hardware infrastructure layer, hardware infrastructure network, a network of machines, physical machines running everywhere in the world in a decentralized manner. And this matters, and it matters a lot. And it matters so much to have this that in Ethereum 2, it's in the very same design goals of Ethereum 2 to make it possible for it to be as decentralized as possible. So everybody here is familiar with the trade-offs that you need to do in order to have certain types of consensus protocols and some types of blockchain parameters that you can tweak. For example, in order to run a Solana node, you need a computer as big as this table. They are very resource intensive, and this allows for a whole lot of transactions, very cheap transaction costs, but it's a trade-off, right? Everybody complains about Ethereum gas costs, but there is a trade-off. Everybody can run a validator in a machine like this one over there, like the ones that we have on those boxes over there. So there is a trade-off. Yeah, so the design principles of Ethereum 2 are decentralization, resilience, security, simplicity, and longevity. I am not making this shit up. This is Daniel Ryan. So it should be able to run in anybody's typical consumer hardware, not these big massive servers on AWS. It has penalties. People don't know that, but it has penalties that their only objective is to disincentivize centralization. Those penalties are called correlation penalties, and it means that if for any reason, because everybody is using the same cloud provider and this cloud provider goes down for a while, the penalty, the inactivity penalty of this will be higher the bigger the number of validators that are offline at any given moment. Why? Because it tries to disincentivize everybody putting the eggs in the same basket. So if everybody is using Amazon Web Services, the correlation penalty that the validators running, they're not only going to have inactivity leak, they're going to have inactivity leak plus a massive correlation penalty because everybody's running them in the same place. So in the design of Ethereum 2, they took these sort of measures, these sort of things that make it, well, that try to incentivize decentralized validators. So why is decentralization important? I was looking today, and we have about 100 billion total value locked in Ethereum, and that's quite a bit of money. And we sort of kind of need to protect this in some sort of way, but we need to protect against what? We need to protect against downtime, for example. We need to protect against political action, big tech action. And so it's very important to have decentralized validation or decentralized nodes, because we need to be under different political jurisdictions. Imagine that the United States declares cryptocurrency validation illegal, or that you cannot validate blocks that have DAI transactions because DAI is not a registered security under the SEC or like whatever. So I see Maker over there. So yeah, imagine that this happens, and then if 50% of the validators are in the United States, Ethereum just takes a big hit. It would survive, but it would take a big hit. There will be all sorts of chaos in network stability. Then different geographical location there needs to be, because failures on power grid, because there's a third world war and a big nuke blows up half of Europe. Ethereum needs to keep running. We have all of this. We're preparing an infrastructure that will keep running no matter what happens. The power grid goes down. So if all the servers, all of the validators are in the same server farm, the server farm goes down. Different ISPs can block specific IPs or can block specific activities, specific types of traffic. So again, we're vulnerable to political interference here. Different hardware. There's a 0-day exploit on like Intel chips. So if everybody's running a validator on Intel Xeon CPUs, which are in servers, well, then we're all screwed, because we can be exploited. And most importantly, we need different ownership. We need this to be controlled by different people. And this is very important. Different ownership is very important. Diversified enough to not fuck up like the Steam network. Who's familiar here with what happened with the Steam network? What happened? And he did buy ownership of the network, and he basically bought Steam. But what happened is there was a bunch of people within the Steam community that said, no, we're not going to go with this. We're just going to keep doing our own thing. So Justin Sun did something much worse than gaining control. He went to the validators, which were all exchanges, by the way. Similar situation with Ethereum, actually. Lots of Kraken, lots of Coinbase validators. But it went to Poloniex, went to Huobi, and to another one that they're now dead. Nobody remembers them anymore. No, I'm joking. So went to 3 big exchanges that had more than the amount necessary for the consensus, and made an invalid state transition on the Steam blockchain in order to empty the wallets of these people who were dissenting with him, that did not agree with him taking over the Steam network. Invalid state transitions. He bribed exchanges. Like, dude, like, what are you gaining validating the Steam network? This has no value at all. I'm gonna give you a milli if you validate this invalid state transition, and these people will find themselves in the next block without a token, without any governance rights. This happened in the Steam network. So this is why it's very important to have different ownership. So if there is an actor that can drive all of us, it has to be able to find each person individually. This is why it's so important to have decentralized validation. And also related to ownership, there is capturing value. So there is, again, 100 billion in the Ethereum blockchain right now. And every transaction fee that people are doing, all of this that is generated, we have the potential to distribute it, not among the same 5 cloud companies that are taking all of the value of the internet. If you want to set up a website, you just go to Amazon Web Services, you just go to Google, you just go to Azure. Like, there's not much more than you can do. There's 5 companies having most of the market. And they all take their cut. They're the same big companies, they take their cut. It's the Amazon tax, as it's called.
So this is a very interesting point that you mentioned, because there's a PBS, right? Proposal builder separation.
Uh-huh.
So the fees and the transaction actually goes to the machine operators. And if that is AWS, if that has been owned by some centralized players, where are you going to end up? How do you send the transactions?
If Amazon participate or Amazon-like infrastructure acts as the proposer or the builder? Maybe both. Right. So if we let, so if we don't have PBS. Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah, totally right. So then we get like these massive opportunities we get like MEV, but like at a huge scale, right? Exactly. So people need to be, we have the chance of each one of us here having a piece of that revenue, of participating on ownership, doing our work, and participating on this revenue that we're generating. So this is, I would say, kind of life-changing. One of the things why I went into the centralized systems, because I participated in the ownership of the protocols that I want to run and build on. So, pretty interesting. Now, let's go to Ethereum 2. Is Ethereum 2 really decentralized? I kind of hinted at that before, but this is from today. Yeah, Coinbase is not here. Coinbase has like a huge chunk as well. It's kind of not decentralized, like not enough, like not a lot. Like you can do a Steam-like takeover. You just need to go after Coinbase, Kraken, Lido, Binance, and that's it. That's pretty much what you need to make an invalid state transition, which will not happen, of course, because Lido has its own decentralization model. That's like it's very extremely unlikely unless there is an all-out governmental law and jurisdictional law and like regulatory law against cryptocurrencies, which doesn't seem extremely likely. But the point is, we need to make it in a way that, as Matt said, trust is kind of finicky. Like we don't have to trust them to not do an invalid state transition. We need to make it impossible for them to make an invalid state transition, right? So DAppNode is also here. DAppNode is also here in the others part. We're somewhere there, and this data is a little bit out of date. It's from ETH Denver. So it's a couple of months out of date, but there's around 2,700 validators on DAppNode, and that is self-reported. And how do you self-report? By putting DAppNode in the word DAppNode in your graffiti. These are the ones that we're counting. When you set up your validator, and we'll see how to do that in a minute when we learn how to start our staking business, you can change the graffiti, and many people have done so. So there's probably, we're looking at a minimum of 2,700 validators, okay? This is 250 million euros of total value locked on validators, around 30K DAppNode graffitis proposed, so blocks proposed by DAppNodes, and this is about 0.9% of the network. I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say that we have 1% of the network. There we go. And one thing that we also do is the people that are validating on DAppNodes, and we'll see how DAppNode works in a minute, we don't see a penny of that. DAppNode is free, open source software that you can install in your machine, and it turns into a personal server that you can deploy validators on, et cetera, from the comfort of your own home. You plug it to your router, it's plug and play. Here you go. You can start deploying validators for Avalanche, for Ethereum, for Gnosis Chain, bunch more. Cool. So now that we know how DAppNode works and why DAppNode helps this decentralization mission that we have, or this decentralization need that we have, now let's see how does it actually work? How do we make it so we can start decentralizing ourselves the network. So there's a simple way, like, okay, if you got 32 ETH, start validating yourself in your own home. We're gonna see how to do that in a minute. But if you want to do that at a scale, if you have marketing power, if you have marketing muscle, you might want to validate with other people's Ethereum as well. And how would you do that? How would you do that safely? People are not going to just drop 32 ETH to you and say like, yeah, please, would you mind validating this for me? And not even like a key store. They will not even give you a key store that is just like they just put their 32 ETH over there without any kind of like security, because then you can just slash them, or you can just like you could do a griefing attack. You wouldn't necessarily gain anything if somebody gives you a key store, because the withdrawal keys, but you can't steal the 32 ETH, but you can slash them. You can do a whole lot of like nasty stuff to these people. So if you want to do that at a scale and help decentralize, you can use Stakehouse. And you can pool it, exactly. All right. Surprise. Good. Okay. So, what do we need to set up this? We need. Wait a minute. We need one of those. I mean, this is probably the cheapest way that you're gonna get. We need this is an Intel NUC, but we have assembled it, and we have put the DAppNode software inside. So it's basically a plug and play validator machine. You get this, you unbox it, you make a video on YouTube, you say, well, this is the coolest shit that I've unboxed in my life. And then you plug it to your router, and you can start validating, like literally. Well, I mean, except for the little 32 ETH problem, you just get the key store from someone. Okay, so you basically need infrastructure. You need hardware. You need an internet connection. You need all the like physical infrastructure that you need. Then you need a business model. Like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna, how are you gonna charge people to for you to validate with their ETH? And that is something that also, well, you can figure out whatever you want here. You can do a million complicated things. Just like one idea would be to keep a slot token for yourself, for example, and be a part of, like have some skin in the game in every validator that you put in your machine, right? But it can be a lot more complex. It can be a lot more. There's a lot of DeFi brains around here. I'm an infrastructure guy. I'm like not super up to speed with everything that happens on DeFi, but you can probably do a lot more complex things when it comes to business model. What staked or slot and derivative ETH allows you is to compound this and create 1,000 million DeFi products that I wouldn't even be able to imagine myself. So you need infrastructure, you need a business model, and then you need a way to acquire customers. You need customer acquisition, you need marketing. You basically need a way where people are going to give you their key stores. They're not going to give you the ETH, so they're going to, how can they give you their validators, their money, their validators, for you to do the validation work with them. Right, so now it's when I will need, now you can take a break while I figure out how the internet works. All right, the intermission's over. I hope you had fun. You had time to go to the toilet, eat a snack, slice of pizza. Cool. Pump what up? Oh yeah. Here we go. So I am connected to my DAppNode now. This DAppNode could be anywhere in the world. Could be in my living room. Could be in my dad's living room. It's like basically one of those bad boys at at my living room in Istanbul. When you install DAppNodes, yeah, but I'm gonna show you how to. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, exactly. We're gonna do that, but we're gonna before we would need to set up the if we want to drag and drop, we would need to set up the actual node, the validator nodes, and so that's what I was gonna do. So what we need is one of those, and then we're gonna set up our node, which is here, and we're gonna be using the Prater testnet. So I have already installed, so the way I would do it, I would go to choose a client. For example, like the Lighthouse client, where I'm gonna validate it with Lighthouse because client diversity. We could not validate with Prism, right? So we're gonna validate with Lighthouse, and for that I would go to get, not like get apt or anything terminal complicated. No, literally like I just pressed a button, right? So what's doing now, I'm gonna make a little intermission here to say what's happening now in DAppNode. So DAppNode doesn't use any centralized servers. It only leverages the centralized technology. So basically what we're seeing here in the Dapp store, all of this list of packages, this is a smart contract. This repository is a smart contract, and DAppNode itself has an Ethereum node inside. You're running an Ethereum node inside of this machine. So basically, you don't need to connect to any centralized server. You basically read your own node that you have in your own machine and say hey, what packages are available to me? And apparently none now. Okay, here we go. So now, what's in this repository is the list of packages and also where to find these packages. And where do you find these packages? Obviously from a DAppNode server controlled, where from IPFS, which also happens to be inside of this machine. This machine also has an IPFS node, so you're connected directly to the centralized networks. You never have to connect to a DAppNode control server. That's why when I told you how many DAppNodes are there and how many validators are running on DAppNode, we can only know the ones that self-report as validating with DAppNode through the graffiti, through the protocol itself. We have no idea how many people are running DAppNodes because they never connect to a server that we run, okay? So cool, now I want to download this. I've read the smart contract repository. I'm gonna go to install, and it's gonna give me the graffiti that we can self-report as DAppNode users. This is cool because it makes you eligible for certain types of airdrops or certain types of activities that we do for the DAppNode users. So you might want to leave that or change it into something that has the word DAppNode on it. That's what we scrape for, the ones that use the word DAppNode. Not you can change it. You don't have to say validating from DAppNode. You can say anything, but it has to have the word DAppNode. Then we're going to be connecting to an Ethereum 1 node, the execution layer node, which in this case is the girly geth node that I'm running. And if you want to sync quick, you can just use another node for checkpoint sync. It is likely that it would happen that you would get a double airdrop if Stakehouse was doing some sort of airdrop as well. You'd get the DAppNode ones, but you would probably get the the Stakehouse ones. That's all right. So submit. Now what it's doing is installing it directly from the IPFS node that's already in here. It's downloading the Docker image. It's installing it, and voila. And we're gonna have it. Good for you guys. I already have it here. I already have Prism client diversity. I'm sorry. And now we have already the validator, the Prism validator. We have the execution. So we have the consensus layer node, the execution layer node, and everything is ready. Everything is running. So now we need Stakehouse. Now we need, how do we get the validator in here, right? So let's do that. It's one of the tabs that I have open, as you might have noticed. I was doing that before. You might want to put your seatbelts on because the speed of this internet is kind of like dizzying. Yeah? I'll try Devconnect. Oh, here we go. In the meanwhile, gonna launch this app. Oh, beautiful. Devconnect is faster, and the password would be 020. Okay. All right, thank you very much. Beautiful. Right, gonna connect with my MetaMask wallet. So, at what point I'm creating the, so you will see the simplified version. I don't know if you've showed this in the morning as well, but there's people keep rotating, so it won't be bad to show it twice. So you can pool the ETH. You can get 32 ETH in whatever manner that you want. We're gonna do it straight up. I've got them in my MetaMask because I like to live dangerously, and I'm gonna play it from here. But you can build any sort of pooling mechanism that you want in order to gather these 32 ETH. And you need to think about this if you want to build your own your validator business, like, because you're missing out on an opportunity if you only target high net worth individuals that have more than 32 ETH. Right? So you might want to think about how do you pool this. You also might want to think about having a good internet connection. Otherwise, if it doesn't work, I'm just going to drop the hotspot. Live demos. Look at me. Now, spoiler alert, we're gonna do it on mainnet now. No, it's girly. Hi, almost. Okay, here we go. Beautiful. So, we're gonna create a validator now, and so let's say that somehow we have. Oh yes, please. So let's say that we somehow managed to get 32 ETH. So we go to create validator. We're gonna use the easy mode because fuck yeah. 1, 2, 3. You will never guess it. Fuck, I didn't write it down. This is bad practice, guys. Don't do that. Please write it down. Here we go. Now, we're registering. Now, maybe you can explain better what's happening right now. Yep.
Right. So, you're gonna ape, no, or you're gonna? Oh no, he went market rate on the gas. It's okay. Anyway, well, essentially the process we're going to share this like an infographic, but the process for registering a validator and getting your derivative tokens has a specific flow within the Stakehouse protocol. And what has just happened? So the validator's credentials have been registered. So what you say is like, okay, with the protocol, I want to register it, and then your credentials get checked. And once they are validated, then you can actually go ahead with a 32 ETH deposit. The Stakehouse protocol doesn't send your ETH to the deposit contract until your credentials have been verified because of a problem with front running. So it's a well-known stated vulnerability where an attacker can try to register their own withdrawal credentials against the validator instead of registering the protocol. So you can try and do that, but you basically won't be able to actually do your 32 ETH deposit. So it's well known, well documented out there. We have a solution that's been checked by runtime verification and all the other auditors, but it's basically, it's for the security of the derivatives. The derivatives only get issued once you've passed a number of security checks, including what you've just seen above there.
So we've registered the validator that we have created. We've created the key store. We've downloaded it in the meanwhile. We've downloaded the deposit data, the key store. The ones that have used the Ethereum, how's it called, the Launchpad, you will recognize that after a very complicated process and 1,000 accept and continue, then you'll end up with a place where you can deposit here, and you will need this file here, the deposit data, that you also have to do through a command line tool and kind of like a bit of like living dangerously stuff if you're not comfortable with command line. So in the Launchpad, you would, after creating this key store and this deposit data, you'll need to drag and drop the deposit data and then do the deposit onto the public key of the validator that you have just created. Now, we've downloaded 2 files, the deposit data, which you will need for that, and also the key store which actually holds the private key of this validator, and which you will be signing your aggregations, your proposals, etc. with this key. Not the withdrawal though, not the withdrawal. And why don't we have a withdrawal here? Why don't we have a withdrawal key? Exactly, because at some point when we put this and we fund this validator as we'll do right now, and this validator get registered, we'll be able to mint derivative ETH, and that's where the withdrawal is. That's where I want my money to be. I want the derivative ETH to be backed up by, and that nobody can withdraw this ETH without burning this derivative ETH that I will mint, right? So that's why we don't have it. Good. I'm going to deposit here. I'm going to YOLO it. I'm not even going to check. Again, bad practice. Fuck, I didn't write the password of the key store. Let's see if I remember. No way. I was joking. I was actually joking. Fuck. All right, we're good. So aping in, setting up a validator, good. Now we have when the transaction gets approved, we will have deposited the 32 ETH into the validator that we have created. There we go. Thanks. Perfect. All right. So approving, boom. Now, oops, sorry. Let's see. Oh, damn. I kind of skipped through a very important thing because it actually warns you that you're not done. You're not, once you've done this, it's not like you can just go to bed and forget about it. Actually, this validator needs to be running somewhere, right? And that's why we have the key store here. We need to put this key store somewhere in order for the validator to do this validation work. I've created before another one, which is still not accepted. Shame. I would have loved to show you. But let's see how we can just put this validator on, right? Like, how do we make this validator work now? So we would go to this Web3 signer on DAppNode. We just open the UI. And no, I think it's not drag and drop yet. And we would import the key store that we have just downloaded. We would put the password. 1, 2, 3. Import slashing protection data. Well, we're not importing a validator that has been already validating in another place. So no, there's no slashing protection data for this validator. So we're just gonna submit this. Yes. Cool. And now we go back to the accounts and we find two accounts here, two validators. The one that I set up while preparing this, which I wanted to show you how we can mint these derivatives, but we can't yet. And the one that we just put right now. So these validators are now waiting to be accepted into the beacon chain, and be given assignments for attestation, for block proposal, etc., etc. So while they're waiting, or once they are accepted and the deposit is confirmed, then we could go here and mint the derivative ETH. And here's where it's important, because here's where we can just figure out this business model. Right now, you guys can do this on your own. You can do this with your validator in your own home, and then you can just sell the staked ETH and the slots, the derivative ETH and the slots to whoever you want it, and never care about this anywhere, like no more in your life. But if you're trying to set up a validator business here, that's like, you kind of need that as well. So when you ask for people, if you're running, for example, if you're running the validator here, you will want to make sure that you have, or the people that are depositing their trust in you, they will want to make sure that you have actually something to win, and that you're not going to just like randomly slash them. And one good way of doing it is when you mint this derivative ETH and these slots, is that you give them some skin in the game, that you give them a slot token or two, or like whatever it is, right? Exactly. So you could do something like that, and then now you have a business model. Now you have a business model that because, as they have surely explained before, because derivative ETH kind of tokenizes the ETH that's staked, and the staking rewards and the slots, what they sort of tokenize is the gas fees and the MEV opportunities. Any validator revenue. There we go. So then you'll be incentivized to run this validator as effectively as possible. So if you have one of these slots, so you will be a part of the game as well. Okay. Cool. So now the last part. So now we know how to accept people's deposits. You will need to figure out how to kind of pool the ETH of your customers, how to make this. By the way, this UI is all forkable, so you could actually fork this and create your own and guide them through this process, guide your users through this process in order for them to send you. You could basically make a deposit page, and they give you the key store that they have created, or they could just deposit and you do all the creation of the key stores for themselves, etc., and then you give them the derivatives to them. So that's kind of like sort of up to you. And the last bit is the client acquisition, which is, like how are you going to make it in order to attract these clients? And people like that kind of like among the developer community that kind of tends to like be overlooked, but we kind of like hinted a little bit at what happens if there is not enough, right? Like it all ends up in the same place. So if you can actually manage to get some people to stake with you, if you can actually manage to be the owner or the controller of a small validator pool, you're actually giving a huge service to decentralization, because you're gonna probably run these validators in different geopolitical. I mean, don't fucking go to AWS. Like I'm gonna give you one of those if you set up a validator business. Okay. Do it somewhere that like that you're gonna have like internet or something, but you're actually doing a huge service to the Ethereum network. So it seems like it's not that important, but in fact, it is probably what will secure. I mean, I wish nothing happens ever to Ethereum, and we never need to test the limits of decentralization, but in the spirit of don't trust, just verify, like we should have systems in place that if something happens, we know that it will not all go to shit. So here is the end of the presentation. So I kind of brought 3 DAppNodes for you guys, and let's see how we're gonna do it.
Yes, but first we want to show you the pooling.
Perfect. Oh yeah, fantastic.
Yes.
So this is
Right. Okay. So we link to the contract. Right, on our Stakehouse Academy docs, we've mentioned a few templates that you can take out of the box, modify however you want, and integrate with the Stakehouse protocol, which is currently live on the Ringp testnet. One of the contracts that you can actually take and modify is, so we have a pooling contract. It can be used for DAO treasuries, can be used for anyone who has like a group of people that have individually less than 32 ETH, that don't meet the 32 ETH staking requirement, but together they can bring their ETH together and stake their ETH via the Stakehouse protocol, and get derivative ETH, an asset where they own the underlying staked asset. They can get that anytime. So what we did is, so like I said, this is on our Stakehouse Academy. You can see the smart contract there. What we have is we did a test on Gorelli where we deployed this contract, and we had a few people depositing Gorelli ETH. So you can see here on the right, we've got we've got people depositing 8 Ether, 6 Ether, 12 Ether. We've got them depositing less than 32 ETH, and collectively their sacrifice added up to 32 ETH. Now each in this smart contract, it can be modeled in any which way you want, but each sacrifice that was made to the contract triggered the issuance of an NFT representing the sacrifice. So in this case, this user deposited 8 Ether and got an NFT issued. Yeah. So yes. So yeah. So it's just a deposit. Sacrifice. Yeah. So this is a Moloch-based contract. So Moloch, if you don't know, is this all-seeing, all-knowing God, and it requires Moloch wants blood, right? So Moloch requires you a sacrifice, and you get something in exchange for your sacrifice. Here in this case, you're getting an NFT, which represents a pro rata share in the minting of a future derivative. So you're going to get a share of your 1/3. If you deposited 8 ETH, you're going to get 1/3 of the derivative tokens that are going to be minted. So effectively, by minting these NFTs, when you do a deposit, is you're creating a mini multisig where each user is represented by the NFT. The NFT itself is tradable. So you have a tokenized share in a future validator that at some point, as long as the staking is done correctly and you follow all the correct processes, that validator is going to start generating yield and making money. So you have a tokenized future share in a validator. And so like I say, you can deposit less than 32 ETH. And you can see here on this contract, we've shared the link in the Stakehouse Academy docs, but you can see that this contract now has the 24 derivative ETH. It's got the Stakehouse specific ETH. You've got brand entity. You got all your derivative tokens are within that contract, and each NFT owns a share of that. And you can do whatever you want with that. You can stake it in other protocols and make even more money, or you can just keep the derivatives and get the base level inflation of 5.7%. So you've got many different options there. But the point is that even though the Ethereum Foundation is setting the 32 ETH minimum threshold, you've got a way of actually still setting up a validator, even if collectively and individually you don't have exactly the 32 ETH requirement. So yeah, it's not that complicated. It's it's plug and play really. Easy for you to get a grasp on if you're a developer. This is pretty standard. Absolutely, absolutely. So a DAO can put its treasury to work. A DAO that has lots of ETH could appoint various representatives that are a part of the DAO. Obviously, DAOs are have a collective of people. So they can elect people to run the validator. You can do it in a decentralized way, and you can appoint various representatives to actually facilitate the staking. So you just say, Alice and Bob, they'll do the staking, and Charlie will do the actual running. Charlie has a DAppNode. And all of a sudden, a DAO has 100 validators that is helping the DAO sustain its treasury, but not only that, grow it and potentially offer things on top of that. So this is the same for Gnosis safe treasuries, and but the key thing here is that the DAO owns the assets, and if it wants the underlying staked ETH, you would burn your derivatives and get your underlying ETH, which is fine. You can do that. It's not productive, but it's not a productive asset anymore, but you can claim that underlying ETH, if you want to, or just keep it as derivatives, and the choice is yours really. And you can remarket it anywhere at once, right? So you can get further exposure on your yield, layered exposure. You can take it elsewhere, definitely. Right. Yeah. I mean, I imagine people are going to come up with use cases that we've not even thought of yet. We're just here to expose in an easy to use manner. Just re-expose the staked asset as an easily programmable staked layer. That. Yeah, and DAOs can retrospectively say, you can just spin up a DAO, so you can do fundraising that way, or if you have the treasury already, yeah.
That would be an excellent way to leverage the treasury of a DAO, right? Why not do it in this way?
Right.
The DAO still has control of the derivative ETH,
Uh-huh.
the slots and everything. So
You're not selling it.
you don't need to trust any particular person in the DAO to run those validators. It's like you make them part of it.
Well, no, and if the DAO appoints representatives to run the validators, and they don't do a good job, somebody can go in and top up the slot and rotate the validator and actually resume normal operation of the actual validator itself. So it's got self-heating properties. You own the assets. So any further thoughts now? So because the protocol is immutable and it's non-custodial, we don't own. You own your own assets, right? So it's hard for us to, near on impossible and not right, to actually inject any logic that takes any commission. So there's no commission structure here. We can do stuff on top, just like everybody else. Right, there will be competition, but we could do all sorts of things. But the fact is that we want to get this base layer right for the network. It's a public benefit good that everybody can benefit from. Essentially, yeah. All right, Derek's smiling. Yeah. So we're just all we don't. It's not a node running service. You run your own nodes. It's like solo staking, but you get your liquid stake. So it's not. There's many node runners out there. You can run your own node, run it at home, run it via a DAppNode. We support all the standard tooling. There's nothing non-standard about the protocol.
So you can have a business model around Stakehouse. the way that you want to. One example actually said, like, once the merge is activated, all the transaction order, it has to go through that. And you can build around that. So if you take today the ETH value, you just go on the dollar value, say 3,000 something, that doesn't really include the network value. Because the miners are doing that transaction, but Ethereum as a network has two values, and it doesn't accept it. This has to be the last time I'm talking about the but then you have all this kind of revenue generation possibilities from transactional. Fancily, we call it MEV, but that's a very misleading word in my opinion, but whatever it is. But there could be, it's going to be more important when the merge comes, because when we have this kind of programmable layer, we can inject strategies. So one example, Paul said, like the importance of DAppNode here. Think about 8 to 12 months after, right? After the merge. If you have AWS or all these kind of centralized players, they say that we cannot process transaction from XYZ dApps because they don't do certain kind of KYC things, right? Because most of the DeFi dApps are just decentralized, they're using the plug and play, and they will not inject those transactions into your blocks. Where do you go? You can't do anything. We're not talking about freezing asset. You literally getting, Ethereum will not process any transaction if that is not included in the block. But if you want to be included in the block, you need to have the node runners to include that. If you have this kind of centralized players coming in more and more, then they can have this kind of backward policies and say that, no, you need to have X and Y, Z, whatever the transaction that is sending through our RPC point. That's where the human decentralization comes into play. Today, the miners are not doing that because they are like more brute force, CPU driven. They don't even know when they can make the blocks. It's very probabilistic. That's not the case with the proof of stake. The stake is important, so we need to get the stakes into the hands of people who cares and who cares about the network. So that's two-way street. When they care, they also benefit. We build new kind of economy. We build new kind of financial instruments. We build a new, better world.
And you can only do that when you remove the barriers to entry. So there are people who have financial means. They have the 32 staking required. Some people don't and will pool, but there's people that have it, but genuinely don't care about the technicalities of running a validator, or are too scared to run one. They're like, I agree with decentralization, X, Y, and Z, but I'm going to have to spend a week learning about how to set up a validator, how to do all these things, and it's risky, and it's this, and it's that. There are people who are willing to take on the challenge and doing it on behalf of people, which is great. But there's no easy tooling. There's no like common point that where everybody can go to, where the barrier to entry is reduced. And that's what the Stakehouse is trying to do is reduce the barrier to entry to make it easier for stakers, so that it's what Vitalik said. Easier staking tools promotes more staking, promotes more decentralization. It's a flywheel really, and you can set up these networks of validators via Stakehouses. And if you want to, if you're a centralized entity and you're regulated, you can say, okay, well, so only people who have been KYC'd can join my Stakehouse. There's gatekeeping things that you can bolt on top of that. But you can also be open. You can be like, anybody can come to my club. Like we're a DAO. So we don't have to worry about KYC. But if you're a bank or if you're Coinbase or Kraken, you'll have to bolt on those KYCs. It's flexible really, and you can. Everybody benefits from, even though you're building your own little networks, everybody benefits from aggregate liquidity. So rather than fighting, and saying, oh, you buy this, buy that, everybody can build up their own networks, but everyone benefits from that.
Yeah. KYC also means know your community.
Know your community, absolutely. Wow. Well, there's a whole big piece around that we've not revealed.
Yeah, you can basically toggle on like some stakeouts say we will only allow you to put up that 32 ETH if you're part of our community, like like the token list, right? That we have. So you can inject all kind of arbitrary. You're building communities here.
Yeah.
That's it. So
Yeah.
It's collectives and communities.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Literally
People,
that.
there's aspect of community building that's automated, and because everything's registry and everything's tracked, you know who's joined what houses when, and you can claim NFT badges that are automatic. They're like, you know, props, but automated based on registry generations, and you can say, well, I'm part of this community, and if you're part of that community, then they might say, okay, well, everybody who has such and such NFT can benefit from this, you know, like. And you can do that on like Lanski was saying on, you know, you put this graffiti, but you can do it more like on-chain programmatically. You can, you know, this such and such community can get this. So you create this stickiness, and you create the ability to, like, for example, you can, if you're in a community and you own an NFT because you set up a validator and you joined a particular stakehouse, you might get access via Collabland into a Discord, and you're all running your validators. You say, you know, you chat regularly, hey guys, you know, and then if something goes wrong, you can message people and say, oh, you know, something's gone wrong with my validator, somebody help me, right? And you can build this collaborative communities that really support each other and really push things up. Yeah.
When we ran, like last year, we did the registry. Literally, people staked it from their Telegram using Collabland bot. So they were just like /mint, boom, 32 ETH has been sent. Like /stake, just get the deed and slow tokens into their wallet. That's it. So you can abstract away the technicalities, the way the tooling is better. But you need the contracts to do the heavy lifting in between.
Yeah, because it's not a straightforward process to, you know, mint derivatives from deposits on ETH, but it's that level of abstraction that you're given gives you the ability to reduces the barrier to actually getting hold of staked access, staked yield, and then, you know, that layer you can build on top of, and the possibilities are just, you know, endless. All right.